Hi, this is Kyle, and we're up to video 6 in our series on creating and using classes in VB, and this one's going to focus on constructors. The first thing I should say about constructors and destructors is that you don't really need to worry so much about destructors. They're what happens when an object is destroyed, and in VB and Visual Studio, the garbage collection comes along and finds any unreferenced objects, and it destroys them, and the resources are released. So although they matter a great deal in other programming languages, we don't really need to worry about them too much at all. Constructors are methods that are automatically executed when an object is created. They have to be called new, and they can be overloaded, and they often are because we often have a blank constructor and a parameterized constructor. The parameterized constructor requires arguments, or parameters, to create a new object. Let's have a look here. So if we go back to our example, our payroll example, we're going to see here in this region that's labeled constructors, there are two constructors. There's this one, which is the default or empty constructor, and it has to exist. I mean, technically, if you leave it out, Visual Studio takes care of you. It will still work, even with inheritance. It's one of those things where this environment takes care of you. But it's still a good thing to have. You'll require it in a lot of other languages, and this allows you to document that it's there. So I would recommend strongly that you always include an empty constructor. This parameterized constructor has two parameters, an hours value as a decimal value and a rate value as a decimal value. Below, during this constructor, these are the events that happen every time a new payroll instance is created. It's using me.hours, and that's it actually setting the hours property. If we go down to where that property is set, we see what it's doing is it has the option to get it, first of all, but when we're using me.hours equals, we're using a set. This is taking the set hours value and it's validating it on this range, and there's another form of validation here that we're going to talk about much later where the payroll exception as new application exception, that will come later. But otherwise, basically we're seeing the employee hours being set here. Back in the constructor, we'll see that it uses me.rate, just the same to set the rate value. So this is using the set aspect of the rate property. So if we go down to that, we see here it's going to validate it against this range, and just the same there's an application exception here for just in case something goes wrong, which we'll talk about later. The last thing this constructor does is it actually calls in the constructor the findPay method, and this is done because the findPay method sets that individual employee's pay, which is a private variable, and so this is a way these are all being set up when each object is instantiated using these properties. It does use the properties which controls how those are being set. If we were just to set the value, we wouldn't have the validation built in, so this is a good idea. FindPay is similar. So if we go down to FindPay, we see it's got the hours declared. It will actually set the value for employee pay, and also as a part of the FindPay method, it's setting all the summary values. So the total overtime hours are being incremented by whatever the overtime hours are, the total payroll, and the number of employees. That's what happens in the findPay method, which is a part of the constructor. So every time a payroll is instantiated, it's setting the hours value, it's setting a value for rate, and it's finding the pay to set the value for the individual cost and updating the summary values, which are all private variables. You can create a new class or form module that can be used to instantiate new objects. You use the new keyword. You've seen the new keyword a lot. Most recently, you would have seen it probably when you were working with arrays. And so each time that was happening, a new array was being instantiated with a certain set of properties. The location of the new keyword determines when the object is created, and what that means is it's possible to declare an object with the new keyword or declare it and have the new keyword later. And when the new keyword happens, that is when the object is actually created. So you can declare the object and then have the object instantiated on another line if that's important, and there's certain cases where that's valuable. I think we have one more video to go on the subject of object-oriented programming, so bear with me.